Hello and welcome, this is Noah with Nomad Gaming, and thank you for joining us for another video about the Marvel Champions LCG. Marvel Champions is a living card game produced and distributed by Fantasy Flight Games, and if you are looking for a place to stay up to date with news, strategy, deck building, and of course gameplay, hit your subscribe button, turn on your notifications, join our community, and stay up to date with the channel. Today we are going to bring you a new type of video for the channel, excuse me, a Rules Roundup, which will include questions from the internet about rules and gameplay that will help all of us have a better gaming experience. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what kind of questions you've come up with in the community. First question today comes from Pirate Keg. One over on Reddit: if your hero is stunned and exhausted, could you play a hero action attack card to remove the stun? The question here has to do, I believe, with whether or not being exhausted prevents you from playing a hero action, and then the effect on the stun. So let's take a look at the relevant rules. In the rules reference under attack, you'll see that if a triggered ability is labeled an attack, such as hero action attack, resolving that ability is considered an attack to the specified target. Unless specified by the ability's text, a hero does not exhaust when using such an ability. So you can play attack events without exhausting your hero, so long as it doesn't require you to do so. And then if you do that while stunned, stun says if a stunned hero or ally attempts to attack or use an attack ability, discard the stun card instead. So the effect in the scenario that was laid out in the question would be that you will remain exhausted, but you will remove the stun card and you will not resolve the ability of the attack event. Great question, something that I think a lot of us need to be reminded of, and definitely something to keep in mind so that you can make good choices about what you use and how to clear your stunned effects on your hero. Second question today also comes from Pirate Keg, and it says, if a minion is in play attached to your hero, can your hero attack the main villain instead of the minion? Or do you have to deal with the minion before you can go at the main villain? That's a great question, and that has to do with the interplay of the keyword guard. So, under attack, we learn that hero and ally attacks can target any enemy unless a card ability, such as guard, is preventing that enemy from being attacked. Then guard says, while any minions with this keyword are engaged with a player, that player cannot attack the villain without this keyword. So, minions and villains are not the same thing, so you can attack other minions engaged with you, but if there's one with a guard ability, you cannot choose to attack the villain. If nothing has guard, feel free to attack the villain and leave your minions in play. There are many valid reasons to do so, and definitely creates an important strategic decision within the game about how to deal with those minions versus whittling down your villain. Great question again. Alright, let's take a look at a question from user Kogahan or Kogahan. Here it says there are many upgrade cards that say play under any player's control. What does that mean? Does it mean I can play it attached to another player? And it in fact does mean that you can play it attached to another player. It also implicates the rule to help us understand what we can and can't play attached to another player. So let's look at the rules here. Ownership and control. It says that cards interplay under their owner's control if a card remains constant, control of a card remains constant unless the ability explicitly causes the card to change control. That's what you have on this card, an ability that allows us to change control of a card and to put it into play in front of another player. Most upgrade cards, we learn, are interplay near a player's identity card, a modifier, that player's hero, or alter ego, or both. And so in this case, we would be playing an upgrade card whose ability explicitly allows us to put it in play under another player's control. It would attach to the other player's identity and be under their control for the time it is on the table. It should be noted, though, it doesn't become theirs forever, and it would return to your discard pile at the time that it leaves play. All right, let's check out another question here. This is from user Totes Jobin. The Hulk card, Crushing Blow, says you can only spend strength resources to pay for this card. However, how does that card work with Helicarrier? I'm leaning towards you can play it for free since you technically didn't spend any other resources, but I'm not sure if the text actually means this can only be played by paying the cost with a strength resource. Let's take a quick look at the two cards in question here and then give you a solid pat on the back so that you can have credit for answering your question correctly. Helicarrier is a 3-cost support that allows you to exhaust to reduce the cost of the next card a player plays this phase by 1. So if you choose yourself and you play Crushing Blow, or you choose another player that wants to play a Crushing Blow, the cost of this will be reduced from 1 to 0. There is no minimum cost on the Helicarrier, so we can go to 0. And then the spending of resources doesn't require us to actually spend a resource, so you have effectively met the spend a strength resource to pay this card effect. So I believe you are correct. I think that you have found a great interaction that works to your advantage, and definitely should be one that you take advantage of as often as possible. Checking out our next question from user Gelatine, or Gelatin, depending on how you want to pronounce that. It says, if I use Defender of the Nine Realms to put an escaped convict into play, would I resolve its surge effect? If yes to question 1, would I resolve the encounter card immediately or wait until step 4 of the villain phase? This is a great 2-part question. Let's take a quick look at Defender of the Nine Realms so that we understand what's going on. That's a 0-cost event that says discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion into play engaged with you and remove 3 threat from a scheme. So the key here is that we put a minion into play engaged with us. Let's take a look at Surge, which is the keyword that we've questioned, and it says after an encounter card of this keyword is revealed, the player resolving this keyword, this card reveals an additional encounter card. Complete the process of resolving the additional card before revealing an additional card. The original card. Sorry, complete the process of resolving the original card before resolving the additional card. So because you're putting the minion into play, you're not going to trigger your surge ability here, and you don't get an extra encounter card. But a good question, which we'll address later in the play today, is that when you do get extra encounter cards, you do address those in step 4 of the villain phase, so they do sit face down on the table with you until that point. But great pair of questions. Thanks for putting those out there for the community, and hopefully answering this helps several of us have a great gameplay experience. Next question from a user with a fantastic username, Cold Sorbet. I like sorbet, but I don't like cold sores. Fantastic use of punnery, but their question is regarding the engagement timing for Thor's Have At Thee response when paired with the when revealed setup for Underground Network. This is a great question, and it implicates the setup process, which we will take a quick peek at now. And step 1 of the setup, we select our identity and then put that identity into play in front of us, or place it in front of us with our alter ego side face up. So we're going to be in alter ego form as Odinson when we are going through the rest of the setup. When we get to step 10, when we resolve the scheme setup, we resolve the setup instructions on side 1A of the main scheme, which requires us to discard cards from our encounter deck until we discard a minion, and then we put that into play. So that minion comes into play. There are no enters play abilities from that minion, but we cannot trigger our response on Thor because we do not have Thor face up. We will be in Odinson. So great question. Definitely an interesting interaction if you could figure out a way, but there is not yet a way in the game to have your hero form face up at the beginning of a scenario, although I wouldn't put it past FFG to come up with a way for that to be possible later. Moving on to our next question from BD Cool Whip. If there are Facedown Drones in play and someone uses the hero ability on an upgraded drone, what happens to the Facedown minions? Again, let's take a look at the cards so that we understand the interaction here. Upgraded Drones is a condition attachment which attaches to the Ultron Drones environment, which you see there on the right. The upgraded drones gives each drone minion +1 attack and +1 hit point, and then that hero action we can trigger is to spend 1 resource of each type and discard this card. So Ultron Drones creates a type of new card, which is a Facedown Drone, and it engages with a player with a base scheme of 1, a base attack of 1, and a base hit point of 1. So the Ultron Drones environment is going to create the characteristics of our drone minions and give them the base hit points of 1, and then after upgraded drones leaves play, any in-play drone minions return to base health 1 and remain in play. So if you have damage on any of those minions and they go down to 1 and then their damage and their health matches, then they would be discarded from play. But if there was no damage on any of those minions, they go from having 2 hit points to 1 hit point, and they unfortunately remain engaged with you or your friends. Great question, though. Really enjoy thinking about the interactions here, and it's good to make sure that you understand that so that you can take full advantage of things like that hero action. All right, here's a longer one from user PowerYYC. They say, I was playing a game last night with the starter packs, Spider-Man vs. Rhino. Congratulations, great way to start the game. Hope it went well for you. It says that you had switched to alter ego during the player phase, but hadn't exhausted Peter. When drawing up, I had to shuffle the player deck, so that means I needed to draw an encounter card. Pulled my obligation, which I could discard by exhausting Peter. Did that, and then immediately readied him as the last part of the player phase. I'm guessing I just came across the exact right moment to pull the obligation, or did I miss the timing of a rule or timing elsewhere? Unfortunately, the answer is you missed the timing of a rule. Let's take a look at which ones they are, and we can all learn from this mistake together. In the rules reference, when there's an empty player deck, a player runs out of cards in their deck, the player shuffles their discard pile to make a new deck. That player immediately deals themselves one card from the encounter deck. Cards dealt from the encounter deck come in front of you face down until they are able to be resolved, and we resolve and reveal encounter cards that have been dealt to us in step 4 of the villain phase, which you see here on the bottom box. Players reveal their dealt encounter cards. The first player reveals each of their encounter cards one card at a time, resolving each card based on its card type. Each player repeats this process in player order until no encounter cards remain. So this is a great question, but definitely you missed the timing here. So the obligation would have come to you as a face down encounter card. You would have finished the hero phase, moved to the villain phase, and then when you get to step 4 of the villain phase, you would have flipped that face up and then had the opportunity to exhaust Peter. The purpose of the exhaustion there is to make it so that your player comes back around, probably comes back around to your next hero turn exhausted. So great question. Positive response from the community here should be that we all understand again how to reveal encounter cards and also the timing there, but appreciate the question and think that we can all learn from this and move forward together. All right, question from user Pinwisen. This says, just got the game and have been reading through the rules. Notice that for the initial game it recommends that you play with 2 characters. However, we have 3 people who want to play. Will that be an issue at all, or is there some adjustment needed, or is this game to be set up in some other way? That is a great question, and 1 second, we'll give you an answer. Sorry, tickle in the throat there, took a swig of the water, and back to the action. No, you don't have to make any adjustment. The game is designed to be played with 1 to 4 players. You do need to make a 3rd player deck, though, and the starter set comes with the core set rather comes with the new player guide that includes unique deck lists for each of the other heroes. So you're going to need to build one of those decks with the cards that are there, and then you can put that deck to use with your 3rd friend and take on your first villain together. So hopefully you had fun. Let us know how that game went, and that you have any questions that we could address in a future one of our rules videos. All right, moving over here to user Tikiwaka Latruce. That's a fantastic name, lots of alliteration and sounds there for fun pronunciation times. But the question is, so if I reveal a card saying the villain attacks me, does that card get boosted, or does it only happen during the main villain's attack? That we can answer by moving 2 enemy attacks, and we've misattributed that to empty player deck. We'll apologize for that typo and fix that in the future. But enemy attack step 1, if a villain is attacking, so this is any attack. So first thing you do is check and see who's attacking, villain or minion. If it's a villain, you give it a face down boost card from the encounter deck. If it's a minion, you skip this step. So any attack, if it's triggered off an event, if it's triggered off of a scheme, if it's triggered off of the beginning of the villain phase, all of those things affect this question here. Anytime they come into play, you hit step 1. If it's a villain, give it a boost card. If it's not a villain, move on. So there's your answer. Great question. Appreciate you putting it out there for us. But yes, villains always get boost cards, creating a huge amount of variance in their attacks. So moving on to Father Turin. If you knock the villain to stage 2, do condition cards stay with him. And that is under the rules reference villain defeat. Attachments, status cards like stunned, counters and non-damage tokens on a villain carry all over to the new stage. So Good question, and clearly answered here in the rules reference. You do keep everything except the damage when you move over to the next stage. Alright, another question from user Father Turin. Do side schemes come into play with a threat token and extra tokens per player? The answer to that is under side schemes in the rules reference. Each side scheme enters play with an amount of threat on it equal to the card's starting threat value, indicated at the bottom of the card. That is usually per player, but there are several that have a solid or a fixed amount, and then in their text it says to add an additional threat per player. So take a peek, make sure you're following that correctly, and double check what you're supposed to put out there. So is the starting threat, X per player, or is it 4 and then the text says like add 1 per player? Good question, and hopefully that answers it for you. So today's questions all came out of the Marvel Champions LCG subreddit on reddit.com. You can find me or send me messages there with my username YT_Nomad_Gaming. That's, of course, for YouTube, Nomad Gaming, and we are excited to try to answer more questions. Really enjoyed putting this one together for you. Hope you found it useful. We'd like to keep bringing these back to you, possibly on a weekly basis, but if we have to drop their frequency to keep up, or to keep it like a good content length, we might do that and move it to bi-weekly. But it was a lot of fun to do this. Let me hear what you have to say in the comments below. If you have any questions about the rules you'd like included in a future video, please shoot them to us. You can leave them for us by direct message on Reddit. You can post them to Reddit with the tag rules question, or you can post them in the comments to this video. In the meantime, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, give us a like, share this video, turn on your notifications, and of course, until next time, let's go game.